From economic battlegrounds to the front lines of global diplomacy, America's first agenda is reshaping our world, one bold move at a time.
It really is. We're seeing significant shifts happening quite rapidly.
And our mission today is really to unpack these events, these policies, and figure out what the implications are.
Both internationally and right here at home.
Exactly. So just looking at this past week, I mean, it feels like America was projecting strength, really prioritizing its own citizens, maybe more visibly than ever before.
That seems to be the clear message, yes. Take trade, for instance.
Right. The administration went pretty aggressively after trade imbalances. New tariffs aimed at, well, defending American jobs.
And tackling that huge $1.2 trillion trade deficit. That's the stated goal.
Though we should mention there were legal challenges, right? Questions about presidential authority.
Absolutely. That's a key piece of this. The debate over executive power in trade matters, it's ongoing.
And then domestically, big moves on border security, federal resources deployed.
Tied into concerns about immigration and unrest, yeah. And the Supreme Court weighed in, too.
Lifting protections for, what was it, hundreds of thousands of migrants?
That's right. A major decision impacting people from Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua.
Then you flip to the diplomatic side. The Alaska summit with Putin. High stakes.
Very high stakes. Followed by meetings with Zelenskyy from Ukraine. It all seems part of this pragmatic push. Peace through strength idea.
And leaning on allies, too. Asking them to step up on defense spending.
Definitely. Pushing that NATO 5% GDP target is a big example.
Yeah.
Making sure others carry their share of the security burden.
So, yeah, whether it's the economy or national security, the message seems pretty consistent. America first, recalibrating things for national prosperity and safety.
In what feels like an increasingly unpredictable world, that's the argument being made.
It is. And it's crucial to see these aren't just like random actions. They fit together.
Exactly. It looks like a comprehensive strategy, a deliberate effort to maybe reset America's role globally.
Which is exactly what we want to dive into today. We'll unpack these events, the policies, what it all means.
How this America First idea is playing out on the ground.
And what it means for you listening right now.
Yeah.
So let's start with the economy. Reclaiming strength through tariffs and trade.
Okay, so the core strategy here is undeniably America First. It's very focused on transactional diplomacy, shaking up those global trade relationships.
It's a really direct approach, trying to fix what they see as imbalances.
Very much so. And the actions are pretty sweeping.
Yeah, these new tariffs up to 40%, targeting 14 countries.
And some major allies in there, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia.
Kazakhstan, too. And this is on top of earlier tariffs that hit, over 60 countries?
Right. The stated aim, again, is that $1.2 trillion trade deficit and protecting U.S. industries.
But beyond just the numbers, what's the deeper play here? What are the ripples we might not see immediately?
Well, it's not just about the economics, is it? These tariffs are fundamentally forcing companies in countries to rethink their supply chains.
Ah, so it's bigger than just trying to balance the books.
Much bigger. It forces a hard look at long-standing trade ties. It could lead to major realignments down the road, maybe even ones that nobody expects right now.
It definitely prioritizes homegrown industries, but you're saying it might push other countries to, find new partners.
Exactly. Diversify their own economies, reduce dependence on the U.S. market, perhaps.
We have seen some specific outcomes already, haven't we? Like Malaysia.
Yeah, they managed to get a lower tariff, 19% instead of potentially 49%. That's huge for their garment sector. Supposedly saves 1 million jobs.
And South Korea got 15%, similar to deals with Japan and the EU, puts them ahead of India or Brazil in this tariff structure.
Right. India's facing 25%, Brazil 50%. So there are winners and losers in this immediate phase.
Okay, so these look like wins, maybe tactical wins for certain countries or sectors. But what are the trade-offs? Is there a risk of retaliation? What should, the average person be watching for?
That's the key question. It's not just a one-off adjustment. There's a real potential for a domino effect.
How so?
Well, one country gets a better deal, but another gets hit harder. That second country might look for other markets, or, importantly, slap their own tariffs on U.S. goods.
Ah, a trade war escalation, potentially.
Could be. Or just a more complex, fragmented global trade system. And for you, listening, this could mean a few things. Maybe certain imported goods become harder to find, or maybe they just get more expensive as companies pass on those tariff costs.
So it hits the pocketbook.
It absolutely can. It affects consumer choices, definitely.
And wrapped up in all this is that legal fight, the courts getting involved over presidential power.
Right. A federal court initially said these tariffs went beyond what the president could do under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEPA.
But then an appeals court put that on hold, or allowed the tariffs to continue for now.
Correct. A temporary stay.
Mm-hmm.
But the core legal question is still there.
Why is that specific law, IEPA, so important here? What's the debate really about?
Well, IEPA gives the president pretty broad powers to regulate international commerce, but usually during a declared national emergency. Okay, so the fight is over whether a big trade deficit, even a massive one, actually counts as that kind of emergency under the law.
I see. So it's about the definition of emergency.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it raises fundamental questions about checks and balances. How much power does the executive branch have to make major economic moves like this, potentially without clear approval from Congress?
So it's not just about these specific tariffs. It could set a precedent.
Exactly. It's about the balance of power between branches of government.
Okay, let's shift gears from economics to diplomacy and, well, military strength. This peace through strength idea, particularly regarding Russia and Ukraine. That Alaska summit was a big moment.
It definitely was. It signaled a different kind of approach to a really strained relationship.
Both Trump and Putin called the talks thorough and useful, right?
They did. And Putin even acknowledged things were at their lowest point since the Cold War. He seemed to want to amend the situation.
And he commented on Trump's focus.
Yeah, Putin observed that Trump sincerely cares about the prosperity of his nation and also understands that Russia has its own national interests. Interesting framing.
There was that human element, too, the letter from Melania Trump about the Ukrainian children.
Yes, hand-delivered to Putin, addressing a very serious issue, a war crime, a direct personal touch amidst the high-level talks.
But even with all that, no actual ceasefire deal for Ukraine came out of it.
No. Which really just highlights how incredibly complex and difficult that situation remains. Diplomacy opened a door, perhaps, but didn't resolve the core conflict.
So, okay, the summit happens, talks are useful, but the war goes on. What happens next? How did the administration use military signals and economic pressure then?
Well, after the summit, and particularly after what was described as a menacing tweet from Russia's Dmitry Medvedev, the response was pretty swift.
What was it?
The deployment of nuclear-capable submarines to, quote, appropriate regions to protect our people.
Wow, okay. That's a strong signal.
A very clear message of strength and resolve. It showed that diplomatic talk didn't mean military readiness was off the table, a tangible demonstration of power.
And then came the economic threats, layering that on top.
Right. A 50-day deadline for Putin to stop the aggression. The threat was 100% tariffs on all Russian goods.
100%. That's massive.
Huge. Plus, very severe secondary tariffs on countries like China and India if they kept trading with Russia. That hits third parties, widening the pressure.
And what about support for Ukraine in this?
Well, European NATO members stepped up. They committed to fully finance Patriot missile shipments to Ukraine.
And Trump supported that.
Praised it as unity, yeah.
Yeah.
And pushed for getting those systems delivered fast from European stockpiles. So pressure on Russia, support for Ukraine, and pushing allies to contribute more. It's a multi-pronged approach.
This seems to tie into that broader NATO push you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, he's urging allies to boost air and missile defenses by 400%.
400%?
Yes. And military spending up to 5% of GDP. That's the goal for the upcoming Hague summit. It's not just about Ukraine now. It's about Russia being seen as a long-term threat.
And Germany's move fits in here, too.
Definitely. Making their first permanent foreign troop deployment since World War II, sending troops to Lithuania. That's a major shift in German defense policy, showing a new willingness among European nations to, bolster their own defenses.
So a lot happening on the deterrence and allied front. What about the path to peace itself? What's Ukraine asking for, and what are the sticking points?
Well, President Zelenskyy, he's pushing hard. He wants security guarantees, naturally. He's talking about a huge $100 billion U.S. weapons purchase, but financed by Europe.
Interesting financing idea.
And a $50 billion drone production partnership with American companies. He even said Ukraine's ready to buy Patriot systems if they have to, clearly focused on boosting their air defenses.
And then there's that wildcard statement from Trump about Crimea.
Ah, yes. Telling Time magazine that Crimea will stay with Russia.
Which is controversial, to say the least. It breaks with decades of U.S. policy, right?
Completely. Since Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, The consistent U.S. position, like most of the West, has been that it was illegal and Ukraine's territory should remain whole.
So what could this statement mean strategically? Is it a negotiating tactic or something else?
It's hard to say definitively. It could be seen as a very pragmatic, maybe cynical way to signal a possible path forward in negotiations, acknowledging a difficult reality on the ground to maybe get concessions elsewhere for a peace deal.
But the downside.
Huge downsides. It risks alienating allies who stand firm on international law. It could be seen as legitimizing aggression, potentially encouraging other countries with territorial ambitions. It's a really high-stakes gamble.
High stakes indeed. Even Hillary Clinton said, if Trump could end the war without giving up territory, she'd nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Shows the pressure.
Absolutely. The stakes couldn't be higher.
And for you listening, these aren't just abstract geopolitical chess moves. They affect global stability, alliances, energy prices.
Even the balance of power that shapes international security. Distant conflicts can have very real ripple effects closer to home. Understanding these moves helps you see that connection.
Okay, let's bring the focus back home now. Securing the homeland border, governance, election integrity. There's been a really assertive approach on border control.
Definitely. An aggressive deportation agenda. We heard reports of ICE agents given quotas like 3,000 arrests a day. That's triple previous goals.
Wow.
And that Supreme Court decision we mentioned earlier fits right in lifting the freeze on the plan to revoke temporary legal protections for hundreds of thousands from specific countries. Clears the path for more enforcement.
And the National Guard deployment in LA, that felt like a major step.
It was. 2,000 troops sent after protests against immigration raids. And importantly, it was done under Title X authority.
Okay, explain that for us. Title X means federal control.
Exactly. It puts the state's National Guard under direct federal command, not the governor's.
Why is that such a big deal, legally and politically?
Well, using Title X for domestic law enforcement situations like this is unusual and very potent. It essentially overrides state authority.
Which Governor Newsom wasn't happy about.
Not at all. He called it a military dragnet, a brazen abuse of power. It sparks that classic federal versus state power debate. It shows a willingness to use strong federal power to push domestic goals, even if states object.
And the focus extends beyond the border itself, right?
Yeah.
Targeting cartels.
Yes, authorizing the Pentagon to target drug cartels as terrorist organizations in Latin America. Though Mexico's president pushed back on reports of incursions, saying no invasion, still, it signals a harder line.
And changes to visa policies, too.
A couple of things there. A pilot program requiring big bonds up to $15,000 from travelers from countries with high rates of overstaying visas.
Okay.
And expanding social media screening for student visas, citing national security, more scrutiny overall.
Shifting to government itself, efficiency, accountability, that Supreme Court ruling backing the plan to fire federal workers was significant.
Hugely significant. It essentially gave the green light to potentially fire hundreds of thousands of federal workers, reviving this thing called Project 2025.
Right, Project 2025. What is that exactly? What's the goal?
It's basically a detailed blueprint put together by conservative groups for a massive overhaul of the federal government.
Overhaul how?
By restructuring agencies, shifting powers, aiming to significantly shrink the federal bureaucracy and increase direct presidential control over it. The stated goal is efficiency and making sure agencies follow the president's agenda. It's a plan for a dramatic reshape.
And then there was the firing of the labor statistics chief, Erica McIntarfer.
Yes, with the accusation that she was rigging jobs numbers.
But critics pushed back hard on that, even people appointed by Trump previously.
They did, like former BLS Commissioner Bill Beach, who called the claims baseless. The concern raised by critics is about politicizing essential government data.
Why is the integrity of that data, like job numbers, so vital?
Because everyone relies on it. Businesses making investment decisions, policymakers crafting laws, even you trying to understand the economy. It needs to be seen as objective, reliable.
So if people start thinking it's rigged,
it erodes trust. Trust in government institutions, trust in the data itself. It can make it harder for anyone, regardless of politics, to make sound economic decisions. Critics argue it actually threatens economic strength in the long run.
Okay, and finally, under this domestic umbrella, election integrity, a really hot topic.
Very much so. President Trump announced an executive order aimed at eliminating mail-in voting.
Calling the system corrupt and claiming the U.S. is the only country using it.
Right. Though fact checks quickly pointed out that's not accurate. International data shows dozens of countries, including most of Europe, allow mail-in voting in some form.
So what's the core tension here? Access versus security.
That's pretty much it. Supporters of mail-in voting say it boosts participation, makes it easier for people to vote, especially those who are busy, elderly, or have disabilities.
And the critics?
They raise concerns about potential fraud or coercion, although widespread fraud in mail-in systems hasn't really been proven by election experts or officials.
So the real stake is public confidence.
I think so. When you question the methods of voting, it can lead people to distrust the results, which is fundamental to democracy. The fact that many other established democracies use it does add context, suggesting it's not inherently corrupt.
So for you listening, all these domestic shifts, border, government structure, election rules, they really touch on core issues. Individual freedoms, national security, trust in institutions. It's about how power operates day to day.
Right. Let's broaden the view again. The changing global landscape, a multipolar world. China's influence is obviously a huge piece of this.
Absolutely huge. And they're not shy about showing it. That recent military parade was a major display.
Showcasing advanced weapons, hypersonics, the Guam killer missile.
Exactly. But almost more significant was who was there watching. Kim Jong-un from North Korea, Putin from Russia, Iran's President Pezeshkian.
Analysts call them the axis of upheaval. That's the term being used. It signals a clear alignment, a bloc openly challenging the Western-led order. It's a deliberate geopolitical statement.
And it's backed by growing military power, especially nuclear. That Summary I report was startling.
It really was. China is the fastest-growing nuclear power. They estimate at least 600 warheads now, adding about 100 a year.
Projected to reach 1,500 by 2035, rivaling the U.S. and Russia.
That's the projection. China maintains its stance as self-defensive, but those numbers indicate a major shift in strategic capability and ambition.
And they're building partnerships, too, aren't they? Like through the SKO.
Right, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They held a summit in Tianjin focused on Eurasian solidarity, promoting this multipolar world idea. The SKO is increasingly seen as a security bloc counterbalancing Western alliances.
And India seems caught in the middle, maybe.
It's interesting. India's Prime Minister Modi met with Xi Jinping at that SCO summit to talk cooperation. Notably, this comes as U.S. tariffs on Indian goods might be pushing Delhi, maybe reluctantly, a bit closer to Beijing.
So U.S. policy has knock-on effects, shifting alignments elsewhere.
Definitely. It shows how interconnected everything is. Actions taken for one reason can influence major power relationships in unexpected ways.
Okay, turning to the Middle East. More high-stakes moves. Operation Midnight Hammer.
Yes, those surprise overnight strikes ordered by President Trump against 3 key Iranian nuclear sites, Fordo, Natanz, Esfahan.
Described as an incredible and overwhelming success. What was the strategic thinking behind hitting those specific sites?
Those are linchpins of Iran's known nuclear program. Fordo is buried deep underground, Natanz is a major enrichment facility, Esfahan is involved in conversion. Hitting them was meant to severely degrade Iran's ability to pursue nuclear weapons.
Sending a very strong message.
An unmistakable message about red lines and the willingness to use force, perhaps preemptively, to prevent nuclear proliferation in the region. A demonstration of capability and resolve.
Iran did retaliate, though. Missiles fired at Israel.
Over 30 ballistic missiles, yes. A significant response.
But then, shortly after, President Trump announced a ceasefire between Iran and Israel.
He did. Called it a total and complete ceasefire, the end of the 12-day war. Though, crucially, official confirmation from Tehran or Jerusalem was reported as pending at the time.
And Trump's position on direct U.S. involvement?
He said he was undecided, but that a deal could still happen, and significantly warned not to kill Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader.
Why that specific warning? To avoid escalation.
Precisely. It seems like an attempt to keep a lid on things, even after direct strikes. Taking out the supreme leader would likely trigger a massive, uncontrollable escalation. So it's this mix. Strong military action, but also trying to manage the fallout and keep diplomatic off-ramps open, however narrow.
A very delicate balancing act. Force and restraint almost simultaneously.
Absolutely. Projecting power while trying to avoid a full-blown regional war. A classic foreign policy tightrope.
So again, for you listening, this rise of different power centers like China and these intense flare-ups in the Middle East, they directly shape America's role in the world.
And they impact your security. Think about global trade routes, energy stability, the potential need for U.S. intervention. It all connects back to the balance of global power.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. It really feels like these recent events paint a picture of a decisive shift, doesn't it, towards this America First strategy.
Across the board, really. Trade, defense policy, domestic issues.
We've seen that focus on national interests, protecting the economy, taking a very strong, pragmatic stance in global conflicts.
All while trying to navigate this incredibly complex, changing world order. From the tariffs
Right, challenging those trade deficits.
to the high-stakes diplomacy with Russia and Ukraine,
Yeah.
bolstering NATO.
The aggressive border enforcement, the debates over government efficiency, election laws.
It all points to a significant recalibration of priorities, both at home and abroad, under that America First banner.
So here's something to think about. In a world where power structures are clearly shifting, is prioritizing national sovereignty and economic strength, like we're seeing, the only way to achieve lasting security and prosperity?
Or does that approach risk creating more fragmentation, maybe even more conflict down the line?
It's a big question. How might these bold moves we've discussed today shape the next decade? Not just for the U.S., but for the entire world. Something to consider.